human helps alien girl decode a strange pulse pattern, triggering a countdown neither expected. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Ethan Clarke stood at the edge of the observation deck, gazing out at the sprawling alien city below. The skyline stretched in strange, jagged angles, lit by pulsing lights that danced like fireflies, illuminating the night sky in colors he had never seen before. His fingers drummed lightly against the cold metal railing as he tried to steady his thoughts. He wasn't here for the views, though the alien world was certainly captivating. His mission was clear: help decode a strange pulse pattern that had begun interfering with communications across the system, a task that brought him face to face with someone he never thought he'd meet, Zara, the alien girl who had somehow become his unexpected partner. Zara was nothing like the aliens he had encountered before. Tall and graceful, her skin shimmered with a soft, almost iridescent glow, the color shifting from blue to violet depending on how the light hit it. Her eyes were the brightest shade of green, sharp and full of curiosity, but there was something else behind them, something unreadable, like a storm waiting to break. Despite the obvious differences in their physiology, Ethan couldn't help but feel a strange connection. As she entered the room, Zara's presence was almost overwhelming. She moved with a fluidity that seemed unnatural, almost too graceful for a human to understand. Yet, there was an unmistakable intelligence in her every step, the way she analyzed the complex data on the screen in front of them. The pulse pattern they were trying to decode had baffled the best of their scientists, but there was a chance, just a chance, that the solution lay in Zara's understanding of frequencies his human brain couldn't quite comprehend. As she studied the patterns, her brow furrowed, and she paused, her fingers hovering over the console. "It's not random," she muttered, her voice soft, but full of intensity. It's a message, not a signal." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. A message? He leaned forward, scanning the readout. The strange patterns flickered across the screen, pulsing in rhythmic intervals. It didn't make sense. A message? Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. From whom? Zara turned to him, her expression unreadable. From someone, or something, out there, she replied, her gaze fixed on the screen. But it's more than that. It's a countdown. Ethan's eyes widened as the realization hit him. A countdown. They had no idea what it meant, but the fact that it was being triggered by this pulse, it felt urgent, dangerous even. Without thinking, he moved closer, his fingers brushing the console. "We have to figure out what this is before it's too late," he said, his voice firm with determination. Zara nodded, and for the first time since he'd met her, Ethan saw something softer in her eyes, a shared understanding, a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could do this together. The countdown was ticking, and they were running out of time. I feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him as Ethan stood by the console, watching Zara's fingers dance across the alien interface. The pulse patterns flickered in rhythm, and a strange hum filled the room, matching the heartbeat of whatever it was they were dealing with. They had barely begun to scratch the surface of the mystery, but the urgency of the countdown was palpable. The soft glow of the console reflected off Zara's skin, casting her features in an otherworldly light. Her eyes, still sharp, glanced up at him as she continued to work, the silence between them growing thicker with every passing second. Ethan's mind raced. He had never felt so out of his depth. This wasn't just an alien artifact they were trying to decode, this was something far bigger. Zara looked back at him, her expression unreadable. "This pulse is a signal," she said, her voice quiet, yet unwavering. "But it's not just a message. It's a warning. A countdown to something far worse than we imagined." Ethan felt a chill run through him. A warning? The sense of unease that had been building since they first encountered this signal intensified. "How long do we have?" he asked, his voice steady despite the mounting tension. Zara turned to him. Her eyes locked on his with a seriousness he had never seen before. "Not long," she replied, her tone cold, the weight of her words sinking in. The countdown was ticking, and with every second, they were running out of time. Ethan stepped closer to the console, his heart racing as he tried to process the implications. He had been trained to handle high-stress situations, but this was different. This was alien. Zara's fingers paused over the console. The hum grew louder, and the pulse patterns began to change. They were moving faster now, the rhythm becoming erratic, almost frantic. "It's escalating," she murmured, almost to herself. "Whatever this is, it's not just a message anymore. It's a countdown to something we can't stop." Ethan's mind raced. "What do we do?" Zara didn't look up from the console, her focus sharp. "We need to stop the signal before it reaches zero," she said, her voice full of determination. "If we don't, we might not just lose this station. We could lose everything." The gravity of the situation hit him hard. The countdown wasn't just a countdown to a simple event, it was a countdown to an unknown disaster. As the pulse patterns continued to shift, Ethan could feel the tension in the air, thick with the weight of the unknown. He could hear the sound of his own breath, steady but strained, as he tried to keep up with Zara. "We need to find the source," he said, his mind snapping into action. "Where is it coming from?" Zara's fingers moved swiftly across the console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's not from here," she replied, her voice low. "It's coming from the planet's core. That's where the pulse is originating." Ethan's stomach dropped. The planet's core? That was a whole different level of danger. But before he could speak, Zara cut him off. "We don't have time to waste," she said, her voice firm. "If we don't act fast, the countdown will reach zero, and we'll be caught in the blast. We need to go, now." Ethan nodded, the weight of the mission settling over him. They didn't have a choice. They had to find the source and stop it before it was too late. With a determined look in his eyes, Ethan turned and headed toward the door, Zara close behind. They had no idea what awaited them, but one thing was certain, the countdown was ticking, and they were the only ones who could stop it. Ivan took a deep breath as he and Zara made their way through the narrow corridors of the research station, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The urgency of the situation weighed heavily on both of them, but there was no time to dwell on it. They had to reach the source of the pulse, the one place that might hold the key to stopping the countdown. "We're getting closer," Zara said, her voice calm but steady, her eye scanning the walls as if searching for something. Ivan nodded, his hand resting on the hilt of his sidearm as they moved deeper into the facility. The station had once been a hub of research and exploration, but now it felt like a labyrinth, filled with dark corners and empty rooms. The pulse was getting stronger, vibrating through the air like a constant hum. It was almost as if the station itself was alive, responding to the signals emanating from the core. Ivan's mind raced. What could be causing this? What kind of technology was behind it? Zara seemed to sense his thoughts. "It's an ancient system," she said, her eyes focused on the path ahead. "One that was designed long ago by my people to protect us. But something's gone wrong. We've triggered something we were never meant to disturb." Ivan turned to her, his gaze locking with hers. "What exactly did we awaken?" Zara hesitated for a moment before answering. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not something we can control. It's a force that's older than the galaxy itself, something that was sealed away for a reason." A chill ran down Ivan's spine as he processed her words. He had always known space was full of dangers, but this was different. This was beyond anything he had encountered before. "How do we stop it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Zara's gaze shifted to the floor as they walked, her steps slow but purposeful. "We don't have much time," she said. "The countdown is linked to the pulse. If we don't reach the core in time, the entire station will implode. The energy will spread across the planet, and it could trigger a chain reaction that devastates everything in its path. We have to stop the signal, but..." The only way to do that is to reach the source and shut it down from within. Ivan's heart raced as he processed what she was saying. The pressure was mounting, and every step felt heavier than the last. They were running out of time, and the weight of the responsibility pressed down on him like a crushing force. "What happens if we don't make it in time?" he asked, his voice low. Zara didn't answer immediately. Her expression softened, but there was no sign of fear in her eyes. "Then we'll all be lost," she said, her voice steady. "And I won't let that happen." With those words, she quickened her pace, leading the way down the final stretch of the corridor. Ivan followed closely behind, every muscle in his body tense, ready for whatever came next. They reached a large, reinforced door, its surface glowing faintly with a soft blue light. The pulse was strongest here, the hum vibrating through the metal. Zara turned to Ivan, her expression resolute. "This is it," she said. "We go in, disable the core, and stop the countdown. No turning back." Ivan nodded, his hand reaching for the door controls. The countdown was ticking down, and they were the only ones who could stop it. The fate of the station, and perhaps the entire planet, rested in their hands. Ivan's hand hovered over the control panel, his heart pounding in his chest as he looked at Zara. She nodded, her expression unreadable but firm. The countdown was still ticking down, each second bringing them closer to a fate they couldn't escape unless they succeeded. Ivan pressed the button, and the door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the core of the station. Inside, the walls were lined with glowing, pulsating circuits, the heart of the pulse they had been tracking. The hum of energy filled the air, vibrating through the floor beneath their feet. "This is it," Zara said, her voice steady, though there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Ivan stepped forward, taking in the room. The core was massive, a towering structure of alien technology that seemed to pulse with life. The signal, the countdown, everything was coming from here. He could feel the power radiating off it, like a ticking bomb waiting to go off. "How do we stop it?" Ivan asked, his voice low as he scanned the room for any signs of a way to deactivate the core. Zara moved toward the center of the room, her gaze focused on a terminal that was embedded in the core itself. "We need to access the main control system," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The signal is being amplified by these nodes. If we can disrupt the signal flow, we can stop the countdown." Ivan followed her as she approached the terminal, his steps quick and purposeful. Zara's fingers danced across the interface, her eyes flicking from the screen to the walls around them. "There's a security override," she murmured, her voice tense. "It's locked out. We'll need to bypass it manually." Ivan's mind raced. They had no time to waste. He watched as Zara worked, her movements quick and efficient. She was clearly the expert here, but even she seemed to be pushing against the limits of her knowledge. "Hurry," Ivan urged, his voice sharp with the pressure of the situation. Zara glanced up at him, her face a mask of concentration. "I'm doing everything I can," she replied, her fingers moving faster as she bypassed the lockouts one by one. The hum of the core grew louder, the pulse vibrating through the walls, the countdown ticking away relentlessly. Ivan could feel the sweat on his brow, his heart racing as each passing second brought them closer to disaster. "Got it," Zara said suddenly, her voice a mix of relief and urgency. She pressed a final key, and the terminal screen blinked green. The hum of the core shifted, the pulse fading for a brief moment before it surged again. "No," Zara whispered, her voice tinged with frustration. "It's not enough. We need to cut the power to the entire station." Ivan's mind spun as he processed her words. Cutting the power to the station? That would shut everything down, not just the core. But if they didn't, the countdown would finish, and the entire station would implode, taking them with it. "Where?" Ivan asked, his voice tight. Zara gestured toward the far side of the room, where a large power conduit was located. "There," she said, her voice determined. "We can do it manually, but we'll need to be quick." Ivan nodded, his resolve hardening. He followed her toward the conduit, his pace quickening. He didn't have to ask if Zara was sure they didn't have any other options. As they reached the power conduit, Ivan felt the air grow thick with energy, the countdown almost at its final moments. Zara's hands flew over the control panel, her fingers working furiously to disengage the power. Ivan stood close by, watching for any sign of the countdown's end. The hum of the core grew louder again, the tension unbearable. Finally, with a final click, the conduit powered down. Zara exhaled sharply, stepping back as the lights in the room flickered. The countdown froze. The core's pulse stilled. Ivan let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They had done it. For now. Zara turned to him, her face a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "We made it," she said softly. Ivan nodded, but the weight of what had just happened still hung in the air. The countdown had stopped, but they both knew this was only a temporary victory. There was more at stake, more to uncover about the pulse and the force behind it. But for now, they had survived. Together. Ivan and Zara stood in the now silent room, the pulse of the core no longer reverberating through the walls. The once dominant hum that had filled the air was now replaced by a strange quiet, almost eerie in its finality. Zara looked exhausted, her shoulders slumped slightly as she stared at the now dormant terminal. Ivan could see the relief in her eyes, but also the uncertainty that lingered just beneath the surface. They had averted disaster, for now. But something still gnawed at him. Zara turned to him, her voice breaking the silence. "It's over, for now," she said, her tone soft, almost as if speaking to herself. "But we haven't solved the whole problem. The signal may be down, but the source still exists. It's still out there." Ivan nodded, understanding what she meant. The countdown had stopped, but the real danger was far from gone. The question of what had triggered this alien technology, and why it had come to life in the first place, still hung over them like a shadow. "What do we do now?" Ivan asked. His mind was still racing, trying to connect the dots. Zara took a deep breath, as if preparing herself for what came next. "We need to find the origin," she said. "Where this pulse came from. If we don't, it might rise again. And next time, we won't be so lucky." Ivan couldn't agree more. The countdown was just the beginning. Whatever force had created this pulse, it wasn't finished. It was only waiting. And if they didn't stop it, it would destroy everything. "We've got to move quickly," Zara continued, her voice more urgent now. "I don't know how much longer we have before it wakes up again. And this time, it might be stronger." Ivan didn't hesitate. He had seen too much already to turn back now. "Let's find it," he said, his voice steady, determination clear in his eyes. Together, they moved toward the exit, their steps quick but measured. The research station that had once been a marvel of alien technology now felt like a dangerous maze. Each hallway, each room seemed to hold secrets, and every corner felt like it was hiding something more. As they made their way through the station, Zara led the way, her eyes scanning the walls, the ceiling, the floors, as if looking for signs of what had triggered the pulse. "This isn't just a random event," she said, her voice low. "Someone or something activated it. We need to figure out who or what it was." Ivan followed closely, his mind racing. What could have caused this? Was it a rogue faction of aliens, or was it something even more dangerous? They reached a locked door at the far end of the station, one that had been hidden behind layers of security. Zara approached it with confidence, her fingers moving quickly over the control panel. "This should give us access to the central data core," she said. "It's where all the records about the pulse are stored. If we're lucky, we'll find some answers." The door hissed open, revealing a small room filled with screens and data terminals. Zara moved to one of the consoles, her fingers flying over the keys. Ivan watched as she worked, her expression focused, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There," she said finally, her voice tense. "This is it. This is where the pulse was activated." Ivan stepped closer, peering over her shoulder at the screen. The data was a jumble of symbols and codes, but one thing was clear, the signal had been deliberately triggered. And whoever had done it was not done yet. Zara scrolled through the information quickly, her fingers stopping on a particular line of code. "This," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "This is a fail-safe. It was designed to wake up the signal if certain conditions were met." Ivan's heart sank. "Conditions? What conditions?" Zara's eyes met his, her gaze filled with a grim understanding. "It was meant to activate when someone from Earth interfered. When a human crossed into this space." Ivan felt a chill run down his spine. He had been right. The pulse hadn't been some random anomaly. It had been waiting for them. Waiting for him. "We triggered it," he said, the words heavy in the air. "But why? Why target humans?" Zara shook her head, her face pale. "I don't know yet. But we have to figure it out, before it's too late." Ivan stared at the screen, his mind racing with the implications of what Zara had just revealed. The failsafe had been triggered by his presence, by the very fact that he, a human, had crossed into this alien space. The thought sent a chill down his spine. Why would they target humans? What had he done to deserve this kind of attention? Zara seemed lost in thought, her fingers still hovering over the console, but her expression had grown distant, almost troubled. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, mostly to herself. "Humans weren't supposed to be a part of this. The system was designed to keep you out, not bring you in." Ivan moved closer to her, his eyes fixed on the screen. "You said this system was ancient," he said, his voice low. "How ancient? And who created it?" Zara took a deep breath and turned to face him, her eyes tired but determined. "The system dates back thousands of years," she said slowly. "It was built by an advanced civilization, one that disappeared long before my people even existed. It was meant to guard against an existential threat, but the nature of that threat is unclear. All we know is that the system was built to isolate certain areas of space and prevent outsiders, specifically humans, from interfering." Ivan frowned, trying to piece together what she was saying. "But if the system was designed to keep humans out, why did it wait for us to arrive? Why didn't it trigger when we first entered the area?" Zara looked down at her hands, the weight of her thoughts evident in the way her fingers trembled. "I don't know," she said softly. "But I have a theory. My people, we've always had a connection to this system, but only in a very limited way. We could never fully understand it, but we were allowed to study its effects. Maybe the system recognized you as something different, something more important than we anticipated. Maybe it's not just humans that it fears, it's humanity." Ivan's mind raced as he processed her words. "Humanity," he repeated, as if testing the concept. "Why humanity?" Zara shook her head. "It's the only explanation I can think of. Whatever this system was built to prevent, it seems to see humanity as a potential catalyst. The question is, what happens next? What is this countdown leading to?" Ivan took a step back, trying to wrap his head around the enormity of what they were facing. The pulse, the countdown, the alien technology, it all pointed to something bigger, something that neither of them fully understood. And it was all centered around him, a human who had unwittingly triggered this ancient system. Zara stood up, her face set with resolve. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice firm. "If we're going to stop whatever this is, we need to find out more about this system, and we need to do it quickly. The countdown may have stopped for now, but that doesn't mean we're safe. We're still in danger." Ivan nodded, his thoughts racing. They were running out of time, and they still didn't know what they were really up against. But one thing was certain, the answers were out there, hidden deep within this alien technology. And he was the key to unlocking them. "Where do we start?" he asked, determination hardening in his voice. Zara turned toward the door, her gaze unwavering. "We go to the archives. There's a secure data vault on the other side of the station. It holds the original records of the system's creators. If anyone can help us understand what's happening, it's them." Ivan followed her, his mind still spinning with questions. He didn't know what they would find in the archives, but it was their best shot. They had to find the answers, before it was too late. Zara led the way through the dimly lit corridors of the station, her pace quick but measured. Ivan followed closely behind, the weight of their mission pressing down on him with every step. The countdown may have been stopped, but it was only temporary. There was so much they still didn't understand. The signal. The pulse. The ancient system that had been set in motion by his presence. The air felt thick with the tension of the unknown as they approached the secure vault. Zara paused in front of a large, reinforced door, its surface shimmering faintly with alien energy. She turned to Ivan, her expression unreadable. "This is it," she said, her voice low. Ivan nodded, feeling the gravity of the moment settle in. This vault held the answers they needed, answers that could mean the difference between survival and catastrophe. Zara's fingers moved over the control panel, inputting a series of commands with practiced ease. The door hissed and slowly opened, revealing a dark, sterile room filled with rows of data terminals. The air smelled faintly of ozone, and the low hum of machinery filled the silence. Zara stepped inside, moving toward the farthest terminal. "These archives contain records from the creators of the system," she said. "They're our best chance at understanding what we're up against." Ivan followed her, his eyes scanning the room. The data terminals were old, their surfaces covered in dust, but they were still active. Zara approached one of the terminals, her fingers flying over the keys as she accessed the data. The screen flickered to life, revealing a vast amount of information. She began to scroll through it quickly, her eyes narrowing as she absorbed the details. Ivan stepped closer, trying to make sense of the data, but it was all alien to him. The language. The symbols. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. "What is all this?" Ivan asked, his voice filled with frustration. Zara glanced at him, her face tight with concentration. "These are the records of the system's creators," she said. "They were an advanced civilization that lived long before my people. They built this system to protect against an unknown threat. But somewhere along the way, the system became unstable." She paused, her expression darkening. "It was meant to isolate certain parts of the galaxy from the threat, but it seems it was also designed to reactivate if certain conditions were met. Conditions we triggered." Ivan's heart raced as the pieces began to fall into place. "So it wasn't just random? The system, it was waiting for us?" Zara nodded. "Yes. The creators left behind fail-safes, but they also left clues to what the threat actually is. That's what we need to find." She turned back to the terminal, her fingers moving faster now. Ivan watched her work, his mind spinning. He had never signed up for something like this. He was a technician, not a hero. But somehow, in the middle of this vast alien station, he felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. Zara's voice broke through his thoughts. "Here," she said, pointing to the screen. "This is what we need." Ivan leaned in, trying to make sense of the data. It was a set of coordinates, a location deep within the planet's core. "This is where the pulse originated," Zara said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We have to go there." Ivan looked at her, his mind racing. They had stopped the countdown, but this was the heart of the problem. If they didn't go to the core and shut down whatever was driving this pulse, it would start again. Only next time, it might be too late to stop it. "We need to move fast," Ivan said, his voice firm. Zara nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We don't have much time," she said. "We need to get to the core before the system reactivates. The countdown may have stopped, but the threat is still real." Ivan felt a surge of determination. He didn't know what they would find in the core, but one thing was clear, they had no choice but to go. Together, they turned and headed back toward the exit, their steps quick but purposeful. The fate of the station, of the planet, and perhaps the entire galaxy rested in their hands. The station's corridors seemed endless as Ivan and Zara made their way toward the core's access point. Every step echoed in the silence, amplifying the tension that hung in the air. The data they had uncovered in the archives had given them the coordinates, but it wasn't enough. They had no idea what they were walking into. The countdown had stopped, but the sense of impending disaster was far from gone. They could feel the pulse, almost like a heartbeat, reverberating through the walls. "Are you sure about this?" Ivan asked, his voice low. Zara glanced at him, her eyes filled with a quiet resolve. "We don't have a choice," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "If we don't stop it now, the pulse will restart. And this time, it will be much worse." Ivan nodded. The weight of the words hung heavily between them. Worse. The thought lingered in his mind as they reached the elevator that would take them down to the core. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and they stepped inside. The ride was slow, the hum of the elevator the only sound filling the space. Zara's eyes remained fixed on the door, her mind no doubt racing ahead to what they would find. Ivan tried to focus, to calm his thoughts, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The deeper they went into the station, the more the pulse seemed to grow in intensity. It was almost as if the station itself was alive, responding to their movements. Finally, the elevator slowed, and the doors opened. The corridor before them was dimly lit, the walls lined with strange symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the low light. Ivan could feel the pulse stronger now, vibrating through the floor beneath his feet. Zara stepped forward, her gaze scanning the area. "This is it," she said, her voice tight with anticipation. "The core is just ahead." Ivan followed closely behind, his hand resting on the sidearm at his waist. The path ahead was unclear, but they had no other choice but to move forward. As they reached the end of the corridor, they found a large, reinforced door. The symbols etched into its surface glowed brighter, pulsating with energy. Zara stepped forward, her fingers moving quickly over the control panel next to the door. The door slid open, revealing a massive chamber. At the center of the room was a towering structure, a web of alien technology that pulsed with energy. The air hummed with power, the energy almost tangible. Ivan felt his heart race as he took in the sight. This was it. This was the source of the pulse. "We need to get inside," Zara said, her voice firm. "The system will only stop once we reach the heart of the core. We have to shut it down manually." Ivan nodded, his gaze never leaving the structure in front of him. There was no turning back now. As they moved deeper into the chamber, the air grew colder, the pulse more intense. Zara led the way, her eyes scanning the machinery, looking for the controls they needed. Ivan followed, his mind focused, every step bringing them closer to the heart of the problem. Finally, Zara stopped in front of a terminal embedded in the core. Her fingers flew over the keys, the screen flickering to life. "This is it," she said. "We can shut it down from here. But we need to be quick." Ivan stood beside her, watching as she worked. The countdown had stopped, but they weren't out of danger yet. Whatever they were about to do, it had to work. Zara's fingers paused over the console, her eyes narrowing. "It's not just a system failure," she muttered. This was designed to evolve, to adapt. Ivan felt a shiver run down his spine. "What does that mean?" Zara turned to him, her face pale. "It means this system wasn't just built to protect, it was built to learn. And it's learning about us." Ivan's heart skipped a beat as the realization hit him. They weren't just stopping a countdown. They were stopping a force that had been designed to evolve, to adapt, to become something more dangerous than they could possibly understand. Zara's fingers hovered over the console, her eyes flickering back and forth between the screen and Ivan. The machine in front of them hummed louder, its pulse more erratic than ever before, like it was reacting to their presence, responding to their attempt to stop it. "It's adapting," Zara said, her voice filled with a quiet urgency. "We've triggered something much bigger than we anticipated. It's learning about us, and it's evolving faster than we can keep up." Ivan stood beside her, feeling the weight of her words. This wasn't just a countdown or a simple system failure anymore. This was something alive, something dangerous, and it was adapting to them. "How do we stop it?" he asked, his voice strained with the pressure of the moment. Zara's eyes met his, her expression one of grim determination. We have to disrupt the core's energy flow completely, she said. If we don't, the system will just keep evolving. It will learn from us, use our actions against us. She pressed a few more keys, but the screen flickered, showing more complicated data. It's not just a machine, Ivan. It's a weapon. Ivan's pulse quickened. A weapon? A weapon designed to evolve, to adapt. What kind of weapon was this? What do we do now? He asked, stepping closer, trying to keep his mind focused on the task. Zara's face tightened with concentration. We need to reroute the energy from the core to a secondary system, she said. It's the only way to stop it. But if I'm wrong, we could trigger an even worse event. Ivan hesitated, feeling the weight of her words. But the countdown had already started again, the pulse growing in intensity. They didn't have much time left. Do it, he said, his voice firm, his mind made up. Zara's fingers flew across the console, typing rapidly as she bypassed layers of security protocols. The machine's hum grew louder, almost as if it was aware of their every move. The tension in the air was thick, the countdown ticking steadily down. Each second felt like an eternity. I'm almost there, Zara said through clenched teeth. Ivan watched the screen, trying to make sense of the rapidly changing data. The machine wasn't just reacting to them anymore, it was predicting their actions, countering them, evolving. He could feel the pressure building, and a cold sweat began to form on his brow. Come on, he muttered under his breath, his heart racing. Zara hit a final key, and the room seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, there was nothing. No hum, no pulse, no countdown. Then, slowly, the screen flickered back to life, showing a new, steady reading. The machine's hum began to die down. Zara let out a long breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly. It's done, she said, her voice soft with relief. Ivan glanced at the screen, still processing everything that had just happened. The pulse had stopped. The countdown had stopped. They had done it. For now. But the weight of what they had just faced lingered in the air. Ivan turned to Zara, his expression serious. What now? Zara looked up, her face clouded with a mixture of exhaustion and concern. Now, she said, her voice steady, we figure out what we've really awakened. This system wasn't just meant to stop a threat. It was built to protect something that might still be out there, waiting. And we're not done yet. Ivan's stomach tightened. The countdown had stopped, but the real challenge was just beginning. They had averted disaster for now, but there were bigger questions looming ahead. They hadn't just triggered a system. They had uncovered a force that had been lying in wait for centuries. And they were the ones who had awoken it. Ivan nodded, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on him. Then let's find out what it is. Together, they turned toward the exit, knowing their journey was far from over. The pulse might have stopped, but the real mission had only just begun.